Hey everyone, this is Paul Salvette out in Bangkok, Thailand. I'm the managing director of BB eBooks, and today we're going to talk a little bit about HTML. Now, what is HTML? It stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language of the web. It's been around for a while, and ebooks are actually based on HTML. They're not based on Word or OpenOffice or InDesign. All ebooks are based on HTML, and the reason is HTML is a properly reflowable format so that ebooks can be read on all sorts of different size devices. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to use HTML, and so you can start making your own ebooks. I've got Ron Swanson here. He's my motivational figure if you're a Parks and Recreation person. And what the first thing you want to do is get a good text editor. I'm on a PC, so I use Notepad++. For Mac users, you might want to consider something like Text Wrangler. But you definitely don't want to use like a word processing program like Microsoft Word or Open Office or something like that. You want to use like a good, high quality text editor. And I use Notepad++, and it's also called an integrated development environment because it can do a lot of different things. You can use it for programming and all sorts of good stuff. But it's great for HTML. So I've already downloaded it and put it on my computer. If you don't have it, you can go to notepad++.org and download it. It's an open source, it's free, it's a great program. So let's open up Notepad++ and get a little bit more acquainted with it. Here it is. As you can see, it's got a lot of buttons, a lot more buttons than say just Notepad, and you can do a lot of great things with it. Um, One thing that's nice about Notepad++ is that it highlights HTML syntax, which makes working with HTML a lot easier. To enable that, you click on Language, and then under the H, you click HTML. And what that'll do is, as you're working with your HTML, it'll kind of highlight different colors so you can identify things easier. Another thing you want to double check is that down here you have ANSI as UTF-8. Now, what does that mean? UTF-8 covers like every letter in the world, like from all different foreign languages. The ANSI encoding, I'll show you here. If you just encode it in ANSI, it only supports like the basic ASCII character set. You want encode in UTF-8 without BOM. BOM stands for the byte order mark if you're really interested. Alright, so just make sure you do that. And that'll make sure when you type in letters outside the ASCII key set, they'll show up there. Okay, so let's get started with some HTML. Now, the first thing about HTML, um, you need to have kind of this weird stuff here. I'll show it to you. What this does is it's telling the document what kind of HTML it is. In this case, we are XHTML 1.1. XHTML 1.1. Basically what that means, you might have heard of like HTML5. HTML5 is kind of the new standard for websites and everyone's using it, but ebook technology is a little bit behind the times, unfortunately, so we're stuck with XHTML 1.1. Don't worry too much about this stuff here. Alright, an HTML document is basically divided into two parts. There's the head section, which is in between these head and slash head. We'll call that the opening head tag and the closing head tag. And that's kind of like metadata about the HTML document. And then there's the body tag, and this is kind of where all your content and markup goes. So this is where all the action happens. This is all enclosed in a big tag called HTML. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this document right now. If you just go save as, and then you want to make sure you save it somewhere with a .html extension. So we're going to call this my html.html. So make sure you save it with a .html extension. Okay. Okay, please note you can just copy and paste this from the BB eBooks website at bbebooksthailand.com/developers.html. Just go ahead and copy all this stuff here. Okay, let's get started. All right, so the body tag in between the opening body tag and the closing body tag is where you put your content. You can tell it's a closing body tag because it's got this little slash here that indicates a closing tag. Okay, so let's start typing up our book here. Now, generally we don't recommend you type the book in a text editor, but just bear with us here. Alright, so my awesome book, chapter 1. This is the first paragraph. This is my second paragraph. Chapter 2. This is where it ends. The end. Okay, so that's our book. I guess I should put by some dude. Okay. Okay, we've got like some content here. Now, to view an HTML document, what you want to do is you save it up here, okay? And then you open up a web browser, preferably Google's Chrome. We recommend using Chrome because the Amazon Kindle Fire actually runs on the same code base as Chrome. So since you kind of want to make your ebooks look okay on the Kindle, it helps to use Google Chrome to kind of debug your HTML as you go along. So I'm going to pull up Google Chrome here. Okay, now to open a HTML file on your hard drive, you just press like Control O, and then we'll go through, find our directory here. Okay, and let's see how it looks. Alright, so we've got some kind of stuff here, but look at this. This sucks, right? Everything's on like one big line. It's just kind of, it's really sloppy. This is terrible. Alright, close this down. Let's get this fixed up. The reason is everything, all your content in the body portion of your HTML document, it has to be enclosed in elements, what's called block elements. The most commonly used element is the paragraph element. So to start a paragraph, you do the little less than, greater than P. That's an opening P tag. Then you close it with a P tag, like that. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and do that for all these. And what's that saying is, hey, everything in between the opening and the closing P tag is a paragraph, basically. Okay, so I'm just going to cut and paste to make this go a little faster here. And let's take a look at how our HTML looks. Okay, always make sure you save. And then you pull up this, and to refresh, so Google Chrome knows to that there's been changes, you just press F5. Okay, great. So you can see like the content is wrapped into like proper paragraphs now, and that's a really important part of HTML, is the ability to wrap everything in these kind of opening and closing block element tags, basically. Okay, we've got everything wrapped in paragraph tags, but well, not everything is like a paragraph, right? Like my awesome book is kind of like the title of the book, so it's more of a heading. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, also headings. In HTML, there's a special set of tags of H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6, which designate headings. H1 is kind of like your most important heading, and you should only have one per document. So I'm just going to change that to H1 instead of a paragraph. Now, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, those are like major headings, so we're going to call those H2. Each of those gets H2. So if you had 30 chapters, they would all be H2. And hypothetically, if we had subheadings inside Chapter 1, you should drop down a level and label those H3 elements. So we've got one H1 element and two H2 elements. Let's save that up. Let's see how it looks on Google Chrome. Okay. You can see by default, Google Chrome will make the H1 heading the biggest, and it'll be bold. And then H1 and H2 will also be bold and a little bit bigger than the regular paragraph content. Okay. So that it's important to use headings like this because it serves a kind of semantic purpose of providing information in your document that said, yeah, these are the headings, and that's good. It's also important if you know anything about search engine optimization or SEO. All right, moving along. Basically, you can write like anything in an HTML document. Like you can write Thai, Chinese, but there's three characters you can't write in your content, or it will cause serious problems. One of them is this guy. Uh, you'll see that like all these tags, they all have less than and greater than signs. The way that web browsers and ebook reading devices work is they kind of base how they parse and render the data based on what's in between these less than and greater than signs, what's in these tags. So when either the web browser or the e-reading device comes across one of these, it thinks it's like some kind of HTML markup. It doesn't think it's content. So if you wrote that into your content, it will break and you will get nasty error message, so don't do it. But what if we actually want to write a less than sign in our content? The special way to do that is you do an ampersand and then lowercase lt. It has to be lowercase and then semicolon. And what that does is that tells the e-reading device or the web browser, like, hey, this is a special entity, render it like a less than sign. And we can also do similar for the greater than sign, which is the second entity that will break your HTML document if you put it in haphazardly. That indicates, hey, mark it up as a and greater than sign. And the final one, the third dangerous entity, is just the ampersand alone. And you have to be careful because this ampersand, it actually comes up quite a bit in books and in content and things like that. So the way to render an ampersand properly is like that. So lowercase amp semicolon. Don't forget the semicolon. All right, so we'll just say that. We'll see how that looks real quick. And you'll see that it will render correctly. Okay? Okay, great. See, you can see it's got a less than, a greater than, and an and sign. Make sure you do what's called escaping those entities using these special codes here. Okay, great. That's basically how you put content into an HTML document. But what if we have, what if we want to put in an image? There's a few things you got to do differently. All right. So taking a look at my directory, I have in the my HTML directory where the HTML file is, I have a directory called images, lowercase images. And inside images, I have an image of Ron Swanson. That's called ron.png. It's a ping file. Okay? So let's say since the HTML document needs to reference another file, there's a special way to do that. Okay? Let's do it right here. So first thing you want to do, an image tag is like what's called a self-closing tag. So you got, it starts out with one of these less than guys, and then it ends with slash, like that. Now, okay, the image, that tells the web browser that, yes, this is an image. Now we have to reference the file. We have to reference the file. We do that with what's called an attribute. And HTML elements all have different attributes. But the important one for image is called source. It's spelled CRC. CRC. Make sure that's in lowercase. For your HTML, everything should be in lowercase inside the actual markup. All right. So how do I reference that file? Well, it's in my C drive under my HTML and then images, but When you reference a file from inside your HTML document, you always reference it relative to where the HTML is that's calling it. So in this case, it's just in a directory called images, and then slash ron.png. And then you end it, for all attributes, you always start it with a double quote, end it with a double quote. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, because the directory images is relative to where the HTML file is. And also for Windows people, you may see the backslash like that. Don't use that. Just use that. Always just use slash when referencing files and directories and things like that. Okay? Also for images, there's something called the alternative text attribute, and it's just alt equals, and then you this is kind of intended for people with like reading disabilities. So you should specify like a description of the image, Ron Swanson's picture, or something like that. Okay. I'm going to turn on the word wrap here. You could do that up here just to make things easy. Okay. So images ron.png. Now an image element, it's not really a block element. It's called an inline element. So all HTML kind of has to be wrapped in like block elements, or the web browser e-reading guys won't know what to do with it. So what we can do is we wrap this in paragraph tags like that. So it's a paragraph block element with an image self-closing element wrapped inside it, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see how this looks. Okay, so what that does is it pulled up this picture of Ron Johnson, or excuse me, Ron Swanson, and he's awesome, right? Okay. Okay, so we've got this ping image of Ron Swanson that's going to be part of our book. Here's the problem with ping images. They're really big in size. Now, you need to keep the size of your images as small as possible without sacrificing too much quality. The reason is a lot of people are downloading their ebooks over like crummy cellular connections where the bandwidth is terrible, right? Or even in like other countries where the internet might not be so great. So, and most importantly, big images cause the file size to be big, which in turn costs you money at Amazon, because Amazon, for every like meg that gets shipped by Amazon to the customer, they take about, I think it's 15 cents out of your royalties. So make sure you keep those images sizes small. So what you want to do is use like a good like photo editing software. I use Photoscape because it's free and I'm really cheap. This is what Photoscape looks like. So I've got my Ron Swanson image, and you can see down here, if you come over here a bit, that it is 163 kilobytes. First off, Amazon's limit on images is 127 kilobytes, so we need to get this smaller. And 500 pixels wide is probably a little bit big. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to resize it to just 400 pixels, and then I'm going to save it as a JPEG, because JPEGs are a lot more highly compressed than PNGs. They're not as good quality, but they're a lot more highly compressed. So I'm just going to call it ron.jpeg. Okay. And when it asks me the quality, I'm going to turn it down to like, I guess 80. And see, I brought my size down to 16 kilobytes. That's like a 90% reduction in size. That's good, and that means if you've got like a lot of pictures in your ebook, you really want to make sure you do this. It'll save you money. Okay. So I just need to change my file name here because it was a PNG. Now it's a JPEG. Okay. So save that. Oh, keep in mind for your file names that everything's case sensitive. In a Windows environment, it doesn't matter, but in other environments, you really have to make sure that everything's case sensitive. And when we get around to doing EPUB and validating the EPUB, everything is case sensitive. So make sure all your directory names and file names are all they match the case of the actual name of the file. All right. So let's take a look at this. See, it got a little smaller, but you can't even tell like the change in the quality. So that's why always make sure you kind of cut your image sizes down. Remember, these are ebooks. These are not print books. So the quality doesn't need to be like stunning or anything, as long as it's functional. Okay, next up, let's make a table. Um, Tables kind of have a bad history in web development. Like about a little more than maybe more than 5 years ago, people used to use tables to kind of lay out web pages, but that has become kind of rookie league. But tables are good for displaying tabular type information, like stuff you would find in an Excel spreadsheet. Now, in the ebook world, tables on the old Kindles are not rendered well at all. Like it's just terrible. But the newer Kindles, like the Kindle Touch, and even the Kindle apps for like iPad and the iPhone, they render tables like okay. And so when you have some kind of tabular data, it's beneficial to put it into a table. Okay? So to do a table, you start off, the entire thing gets wrapped in a table element like this. And then inside the table element, there's what's called table row. Table row, okay? So we're going to make 3 table rows, all right? Now inside each table row, you get what's called a table cell, okay? So I'm going to do stuff Ron likes, okay? So can you see how there's like a big table element, and then within the table element there's a bunch of table row elements, and then inside each table row element is the table cell element. Okay, so it's a little bit confusing, but just try to keep up. Okay, stuff Ron likes and description. So I'm making 2 cells inside a table row. Therefore, this will be a 3 row by 2 column table. So under each of these, I'm going to put like some tabular information. So, okay, handshakes. All right. And the description is firm, dry, solid, 3 seconds. Okay. Now I'm going to put in one more bit of tabular information down here. So skim milk, avoid it. Okay. So as you can see here, we've got 3 table rows with 2 cells. And inside each, with 2 columns, excuse me. So inside each table row there should be 2 cells. All right, let's see how this looks. Okay, you can see how the HTML gets rendered. It kind of lines up all the cells in a straight line like this. So this is useful for ebooks, for you know, obviously for tabular information, but also for more complex things like indexes. So this is good stuff right here. Okay, let's take a look at ordered and unordered lists. Lists, you know, if you want to say make like a straight list of something, there's special HTML to do that. It doesn't go in a paragraph element, it goes in its special thing. Now there's 2 flavors. There's unordered list, which is like the bullets, and there's ordered list, which is like a sequence of numbers. So let's try an unordered list first. So like everything else with HTML, we wrap it in some kind of element. In this case, it's lowercase ul. And then for each list item, you wrap it in this li element like this. Li. Okay. Now I'm going to add some things that from Ron Swanson's Pyramid of Greatness here. So maybe I can put like a paragraph element at the top, like stuff that is great. Okay. And then this tells the HTML document that this is where the unordered list starts and this is where it ends. Do not just put like an li element outside of an unordered list or ordered list element. You'll get weird errors. So take that out. Okay. So honor America. and buffets. Alright, let's see how that looks. Okay, and what this is going to do, you'll notice that I didn't leave, I didn't like make any bullet marks. The reason is web browsers and e-reading devices know that when you have that UL element, it's supposed to add a bullet point by default. Okay, so stuff that is great. Honor America buffets, and see how it kind of all lines up like that. That's real nice. Now another thing we can do, say we wanted it to be labeled 1, 2, 3, right? You might be inclined to start typing, 1, 2, blah blah blah, but you don't need to do that with the OL element. The web, the software knows when it's rendered this way in HTML to automatically start numbering it. So watch this. So we changed it from a UL element to an OL element. All right, let's take a look at that. You'll see it automatically numbers it 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's talk a little bit about comments just really quick. You can add a comment anywhere in your HTML document, and the web browser or the e-reading device will completely ignore it. This is helpful, if you've got like a big document, you want to leave little notes for yourself to help yourself out. So I'm going to leave myself a comment. The Ron pick goes here. Okay. Now, to start a comment, you do less than tag, exclamation point, and 2 hyphens, and then you close it off with like that. And this can span like multiple lines, like no problem. Like so when we go to refresh our page, nothing happens because it totally ignores what's inside the comment. This is just kind of like for humans, or if you want to leave yourself a comment. Another thing we should talk about real quick is the line break tag. The line break tag, that basically forces text down to the next line without going outside like a paragraph element. So why is that useful? Say for like a caption of Ron's pick, like Ron rules, all right? So that's my caption for my Ron pick. So I'm going to save it and refresh the browser, but what the heck, right? It's showing up like out here. I don't want it to do that. I want it to show up on the line below. So to do that, you can do what's called a line break tag. It's another self-closing tag. And it's just BR/, and then you close it off like that. And what that does is that forces a line break, which is analogous to pressing Shift and Enter in like a word processing program, if you're familiar with that. So there you go. It just basically just forces the text down to the next line, but it's not in a separate element. Okay, one big advantage of eBooks is that you can hyperlink to stuff. You can either hyperlink to stuff on the internet, you can even hyperlink to an email address, and you can hyperlink to stuff within a document. That's really useful, and that gives eBooks kind of like a very interactive kind of edge to them compared to print books, which obviously you can't do that. So let's try making it a hyperlink. Okay, so we'll come down here. Okay, the end, and we're gonna go. We want to make a hyperlink to the website www.ronswanson.com. Okay, so we can say like click here to go to the hyperlink. All right. So for an external click here to go to the website. Now, okay. So you know how I'm sure you've all seen it on on web pages. It's usually underlined in blue, and you click on it and it goes. Your web browser goes somewhere else. So to get it to do that, what you do is you use what's called an A element, and then you use the hyperlink reference attribute equals, and then here you put the website. All right, Ron Swanson. I don't know if this website exists. It's just a hypothetical. Okay. Now, if we put the closing A tag here, the only thing that'll show up underlined as blue is the here. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. See, so when you click down here, it would go to www.ronswanson. Now, if you wanted to make like the whole sentence like a hyperlink, what you could do is you would start the A element here, and then you could close it off there. And that's telling like, so you click on, anywhere between here and website, and it'll go to ronswanson.com. See what I'm saying? Okay, just like that. Um, one thing about external hyperlinks, make sure you put the HTTP colon / in front, or else you'll get errors. Another thing that's really useful, especially in eBooks, when you have like table of contents and things like that, is you want like different hyperlinks within your document. Okay, say for instance we had like a huge bunch of paragraphs here, right? And we wanted to click up here and then go to the second chapter. Well, how do we do that? A lot of people who upload their ebooks to Amazon and stuff, they try to do this stuff in Microsoft Word using bookmarks, and it just comes out terrible. This is where you get a real edge, is understanding how internal hyperlinks work. Okay? So same principle as an external hyperlink. An internal hyperlink basically works the same way, except you're referencing, instead of like an external URL, you're referencing something within the document. Okay? So to do that, to indicate that it's inside this document, you use the little pound sign here, and then we're going to make something called an anchor. And you can call your anchor whatever you want, but it has to start with a letter. It cannot start with a number, and it has to be like regular letters that you see on like an American keyboard, not like fancy letters, just regular letters. So, okay, we'll just call this my anchor. Okay? And what happens is, so we go up here, right? And when you click here, it knows to go to something called my anchor. So the second part of an internal well, you have to define exactly where is my anchor. So where is my anchor? The best way to do that for ebook design is, let's say we wanted to make sure you linked it to this right here. What you can do is wrap everything in a div tag like this. Okay? Now a div tag is just a generic element. It doesn't really do anything unless you tell it to do something with cascading style sheets, which we'll cover in a bit. But what you can do is, to set an anchor, you set it as ID, and then you have to make sure it's the exact same name as what was referenced up here. One thing you can do is copy this and just paste it up here, and just to make sure it's the same. And remember, it is case sensitive. So the hyperlink reference gets a little pound in front, but the ID doesn't get the pound in front. And every ID in the document must be unique. If you have more than one div ID equals my anchor, you'll get errors and you'll get problems, right? So let's take a look at this and see how it looks. All right? So I click here, and it's going to go to my anchor wherever ID equals my anchor was defined. Oh, look at that. Okay, it goes down here like that. And you can keep doing that. You see how that looks? Okay, that is a key part of building your table of contents and introducing interactivity into ebooks. Okay, now that we've learned a little bit about HTML, how it works, what we need to do is make sure we're doing our markup correctly. It's very easy to make errors in when doing this stuff. It's not like the easiest thing in the world. And there are so many ebooks with just jacked up HTML on the Kindle store. It's, readers are starting to notice, like, hey, why is, the title heading broken into like 6 lines, and etc. It's really annoying that, these publishing companies would put out this junk to the ebook store. So we want to make sure we have 100% valid markup. And a way to do that, like, how do you check? I mean, it would take forever, especially for ebooks where you have like thousands of lines of code. Fortunately, there's a program that allows you to check whether this markup is valid, and it's free. It's free. It's put out by the World Wide Web Consortium, these guys. So what you can do is I just copied my document. You can go validate by direct input. I'm on the website validator.w3.org, and you just kind of punch it in there with control, pasting, control V, and I'm going to check. We'll see how we did. All right. This document was successfully checked as XHTML 1.1. Great. Now, there's always this warning here, something about like UTF-8, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about this little guy. Don't worry about that little warning. But like, I'll show you, like, what if we like, made a few errors or something, it always happens. Like, everyone makes errors, right? And then we tried to see how it looked. Oh my God, you get like all these errors, right? A lot of times one error will cause like a cascade of errors on your document, so just kind of do your best to make sure you get no errors in your HTML markup. And that concludes the HTML tutorial. Hopefully that gives you a quick and dirty lesson on HTML. Check out our developers page if you'd like to learn more.